and Smokin' Joe and the other teams who are supported by Honda, but not the official Honda team. Tell me about 20 years ago and bring us up to date on how that whole situation changes.
Well, I think that back when the volume of motorcycle sales in the United States was much greater than it was now, the manufacturers had their own in-house race team. Everything was done at their facility under their 100% control. They had no vested interest in performance sales. They were racing to endorse and sell their motorcycles. As the volume of motorcycle sales decreased over the years, they looked to outside companies to support so that it would take some of the costs of racing to a level that everyone could live with. And not only that, I believe that the perception of the big factory team coming out and just dominating left a bit of a sour taste in people's mouths. So they've gone to a support relationship. American Honda and I sit down at the end of a year and renegotiate or negotiate a contract for the next year. The contract determines where we race, in what sanctioning body we race under, and what classes we race. Our race team then takes that association with the manufacturer to help us to get other sponsors to be associated to our race team. And it benefits us great because we're here proving that not only is a Honda motorcycle a very capable bike of winning races, but also that the Arian Racing products that we produce for the motorcycles are equally as capable of making that motorcycle win.
What are some of the speed parts that you build for the Honda motorcycles?
We focus in one area, which is the engine performance parts. The exhaust systems that we produce for the Honda motorcycles, specifically the CBR 600 F2, F3, and the CBR 900 RR. The exhaust systems are probably the one item that most consumers want to change right away when they buy their motorcycle. It enhances the look of the motorcycle, it enhances the performance of the motorcycle, and it reduces some of the weight on the bike. We also produce special items such as camshafts, pistons, carburetor setting kits, as well as Dan Kyle, my mechanic who works on our bikes, learns a great deal about how to make that particular motorcycle a better race bike. And then the knowledge that we gain from racing helps the consumer that owns that particular motorcycle, the Honda 600 F2 or the F3 now, the CBR 900 RR, they see us out there racing on a regular basis. They see us winning. We've won 2 back-to-back championships with the Honda 900 RR. So that guy that owns that bike, he's pretty much going to figure that we know everything there is to know about how to make it from a great street bike into a better high-performance race bike or even a higher-level street bike. And so we get a lot of phone calls from the customers that own the particular bikes that we work on, asking about our knowledge on how to make their motorcycle better.
As we look around the garage here, you have a number of motorcycles, and in particular, you have the #1 plate here on the end bike. Tell us a little bit about last year's effort and how you got the #1 plate.
Well, tell you, it wasn't easy. I owe a lot of credit to Dan Kyle, my mechanic. Dan successfully built the motorcycle to have 2 back-to-back championships, 1993 and 1994. We have yet to have a mechanical failure. The bike won 5 races in 93, it won 5 races in 94. It's been just a really tremendous reliability-wise, no failures, and a lot of strategy going in, seeing what the rules allowed us to do with the motorcycle and building the bike to meet the rules, and having good riders on the bike. Larry Pegram, Michael Barnes, Nick Einach. So it's a teamwork, without a doubt. There's no one particular ingredient that made it successful. I think it's a lot of ingredients. It's having the right bike to start with, a good foundation. The 900 RR has been a great motorcycle. And then good riders that take the machinery that we build them and successfully make sure they finish the races. Racing is an extremely hard job. This is a 7-day-a-week business. We leave here Monday morning, we drive straight back to California, and we'll work on these race bikes until the next race, 7 days a week. We do basically whatever it takes to make sure that when we show up at the next race, that we stand as good or better a chance of anyone else of winning. And I think that's one of the ingredients that makes us successful, is that we never rely on our past race. We always go home and we try and make what we have better.
We've been walking around the pit area here, and guys are tearing down engines and putting them back together and making last-minute modifications, and there's an amazing level of buzz going on here, Kevin. I look in your shop, tomorrow's race day for you, and it looks like you're all buttoned up and ready to go.
Well, we would like to think so. Again, it comes down to hopefully doing all the work back in the shop, which is where we believe the work should be done. We believe that when you get to the racetrack, that you're fine-tuning the bikes, that you're not building them. The homework you do when you're at home hopefully pays off here at the racetrack, but you don't want to do your homework here at the racetrack.
So by that fine-tuning, Kevin, you're talking about maybe tire changes, a little bit of gear changing, that kind of thing?
When you talk about fine-tuning a race bike at the racetrack, every racetrack is different. Suspension settings are different, the gearing is different, and some carburetor setting is different. So that's really what you focus on when you get to the racetrack, trying to make the rider and the bike comfortable on the bike at that racetrack.
What kind of special problems does the track here at Daytona pose for Arian Racing?
Well, I don't think that this track poses any special problem for us, any different than it does for any other race team. One of the unique features of Daytona is the straightaway speeds, the banking, the amount of time that the motorcycle is full throttle. It's held on full throttle at this racetrack longer than any other racetrack that we go to. And it's also the first race of the year, so that means that we've now had 3 months from the prior race of last year. We seem to be doing fine, and we'll just have to wait till tomorrow to see if we really did our homework well.
Kevin, we look forward to see Arian Racing in the winner's circle tomorrow after the race.
We're going to do our best to get there, that's for sure, Jim.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Let's check back with BMW and take a look at some design features. Now, how does the information about American motorcycle needs funnel up through BMW North America and get to Germany?
Well, we've had tremendous input the last few years, and we're very happy about that. Our colleagues in Germany have been very receptive and very open to Americanizing the BMW product line, primarily with our rider and passenger comfort.
We call that adjustable ergonomics, and what this is this allows the rider to tailor the bike to fit them rather than the other way around. The seat is adjustable for height in 3 different positions. The handlebars are adjustable forward and aft and for angle, and also the windshield is adjustable for rake.
What are the safety features on a BMW that you're most proud of?
Anti-lock brakes, or ABS, and the catalytic converter, I think, are our 2 most important features. We've got others that are very high-tech, one being our suspension systems, which lead to a safer motorcycle. But I think ABS, especially since we have just introduced ABS2 to our line of K1100s and R1100 motorcycles.
BMW was the first motorcycle manufacturer to offer ABS. It operates just very similar as on the automobile. It keeps the brakes from locking when you're in an emergency braking situation.
We're here at Advanced Cycle in Saddlebrook, New Jersey. Now, Paul and Dave are speed specialists. These guys can do everything from changing a carburetor to new exhaust to new cams for you to completely rebuilding the motor and dyno testing it for you. We're going to stop in on our technical editor today, who is Armin Amirian, and see what he's up to. Hello, Armin.
Morning, Jim. How you doing?
Good morning.
This is Tom, one of the technicians here at Advanced Cycle.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having us. Armin, I tell you got a lot of hoses and tubes and all sorts of wacky stuff here. What's this all about?
Okay, what we're going to do today is synchronize the carburetors on this motorcycle. What we have on this motorcycle is a bank of 4 carburetors to feed the 4 cylinders of this engine. Now, these 4 carburetors are bolted together, connected up to a common throttle cable, connected up to 1 throttle grip. Why don't you put a hand on that, Jim, and I'll show you.
Gotcha.
What we've got is your 1 throttle cable that opens up all 4 carburetors. What we'd like to do is have all 4 carburetors open exactly at the same time and be open at the same amount. Since it's sort of hard to climb in there and see how they're doing that, we've got a tool to help us. And we're going to connect up the carb sticks to a set of carbs up here just so you can see them a little better than trying to look in there. Tom, why don't you connect them up and show how it's done?
Now on these carb sticks, each one of these tubes you have to keep with the number of the carburetor. You can see number 1?
Right.
Has to go with number 1.
Now, number 1 carburetor on these engines is the far left carburetor?
Yes, left to right.
Left to right.
Yeah, normally it's running like this. While we got the carburetors here, Jim, why don't you take a look, and I'll show you what we're actually adjusting. This screw over here, this one over here, and this one over here is what we're trying to turn to adjust and synchronize the carburetors. There's one cable moving one arm, and as we turn that screw, we're adjusting the linkage to get all the carburetors to open up at the same time. This is, by the way, the last thing you do in a tune-up, because many things will affect carburetor synchronization, valve adjustment, timing, such like that. So after everything else is tuned up, the last thing we want to do is a carb stick.
What precautions should you be taking if you're working on a bike at home?
Well, there's a few things you have to pay attention to, one of which is the exhaust. Anytime you have a motorcycle that's running, it's producing exhaust, it's producing carbon monoxide. In here we have higher ceilings, a larger volume of air, and fans to pull out the old air. If you're at home, better to do this out in the driveway. If you do it in your garage, leave the garage door open and have the fans, the cooling fan on your engine set up so it not only cools the engine, but it also blows the exhaust out of the garage. Since we need to run the bike, and since we need to get to the top of the carburetors while it's running, what we have here is a remote fuel supply. We've got a fuel shut-off on here so we can have the fuel, turn it off, connect up our hoses, and then turn it on when we need to run. If you notice, everything's nice and dry. There's no leaks anywhere, because gas pouring out a hot engine could start a fire, and a gas fire is a very hard one to put out. It's possible to hold the gas tank over, but the potential of the gas tank falling on the ground and spilling or denting is tremendous. Better to buy yourself a remote gas supply like that and eliminate the potential for fire, or minimize potential for fire, and minimize potential for damaging your bodywork. The second item is on the subject of hot engines, you cooking on the hot engine. The engine itself will get to be a couple hundred degrees, and the exhaust will probably be up near 1,000 degrees at its top. You want to be very careful climbing around it. You want to be very careful where you put your shop rags or paper towels, and have a fire extinguisher nearby that's rated for gasoline.
So once we have the carb sticks hooked up, what do we do next, Armin?
Well, why don't we transfer these to the real ones? We're going to start up the bike, warm it up, and synchronize the carburetors. This is the vacuum hose I was showing you before. Over here is the vacuum port, and all we have to do is slide the hose right onto the vacuum port, and then do the other 3 carburetors. One last item on this bike, there's a separate vacuum hose going to the petcock on the carburetor. We have to plug this up. You could use one of these nifty vacuum plugs or a pencil. If you leave this open, more air will be going into one cylinder than the other ones, and you won't get an accurate read on your carb sticks. Why don't you turn that valve on for us, please?
All right.
All right. Ready? Everything clear of the wheels?
Looks good.
So here's where it gets fun. You have to climb in there and find that screw.
So do you start with the carburetor that's the most out of line? And
No, actually you have to go from the inside out.
what's the optimum number here, Armin?
In this case, optimum is not really the problem.
Right.
Because if I turn this, it changes.
Oh, I
it's
see.
not how much, it's relative. Bring in the last one. The other thing I want to check is to see how fast and how evenly they're moving up and down.
So when you do this, you want them all to be in symphony.
We've got them at idle synchronized. We'll turn up the throttle a little bit. Now, we got up about 1,500 idle now, 1,500, 1,800 probably. So it should be enough to give an accurate read, but when we're turning it, 3 is dropping earlier, and in general, it's a faster carburetor than the other one. Well, part of the explanation here is what we're dealing with is what's called a CV carburetor. On this style carburetor, the door exposes the slide to the engine vacuum, and then